Hello, the Divine Code reading for December 7th, pages 365 and 366. We are in the chapter, The Prohibition of Grafting Different Species of Fruit Trees. Topic number 15. A hybrid fruit tree is considered as a new and distinct species. Its branches may only be grafted onto a hybrid of the same type. A hybrid fruit tree may not be grafted onto either of the two species from which it was propagated. This appears clear from the Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Klian, chapter 1:4, which specifies that a certain hybrid comes from such and such a tree. And likewise from Tur Uridea, chapter 2:95, this indicates that we need to know that it may not be cross-grafted with either of the two species used to create it. Simai Adami Eretz Klian, chapter 83. So when there's a hybrid, that's where the species are mixed, and they create a new species of tree that's similar to a hybrid of an animal that creates a new species of animal. It cannot be grafted. We're talking about grafting in this unit, in this chapter. That new hybrid tree is a new category and cannot be cross-grafted with the original trees, because it's now that hybrid is now a new species. Topic number 16. It is forbidden to maintain a forbidden graft before it fuses. Therefore, if a grafted shoot has not fused at the root tree, the shoot of the different species must be removed. Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, chapter 2:95. However, once the fusion has occurred, there is no obligation to separate the graft. When the graft is already fused, the transgression is considered to having been committed in the past and is not an ongoing matter. So the prohibition against cross-grafting of trees, of fruit trees, refers to the process of grafting. So while the two parts are being fused together, that's the prohibition, is to allow that, is to either cause it to happen or to nurse it on its way, to maintain it while it's in the process of fusing. Once it's fused, then the prohibition has already occurred, and what's left over, there's nothing more to do with it. The process has already happened. So afterwards, it can be the fused branch can be left alone. Now, what exactly is considered fusion? At what point? You know, obviously, when the grafting first occurs, it requires a certain amount of tape and such to, there's a binding that has an outer binding that has to be placed on it. And if the outer binding was taken off, or if it was just simply pulled apart, it would come apart. So at that point, it hasn't fused. At what point has it fused in such a way so it'd be fused to the point that it would not be easy to take apart? it would be breaking the branch at that point to take it apart. The above applies with regard to grafts of one species of fruit tree on to another, in which instance the grafted shoot fuses with the root tree, and they become a single self-maintaining entity. So in normal, with two trees, the branch will fuse together to the point that it becomes one branch. If, however, a fruit vine is grafted onto a fruit tree, or a fruit tree is grafted onto a fruit vine, the grafted shoot will never fuse perfectly with the root plant. Hence, it is forbidden to maintain that graft, for to do so is an ongoing transgression. Si responsa Yehuda Ya'ale chapter 350, Katan Sofer Likutim, chapter 25, and Ma'adam Ne Eretz Klian, chapter 70. So there's certain trees that will fuse. There's other trees that are not going to fuse, but the difficulty with the grafting is that the nutrients of the root, the nutrients are going back and forth. So if somebody took one of these other, kind of bizarre mixtures, you got cucumbers and cactus and all that are included in the list of things that you're not allowed to graft, they're never going to graft. But if they're brought together and they're taped up, or however the person holds them together, they will exchange nutrients. They'll exchange sap, and therefore that would be the prohibition, would be to allow that to occur, and that requires a certain human intervention for that to occur. And the human intervention is the problem. If the human intervention is taken away, if the tape is taken away, then the two pieces will simply fall apart. So it's the human intervention that is the maintaining of the graft. Once the human intervention is taken out, then it falls apart and it's no longer being maintained. It is forbidden to replant a sapling onto which a forbidden cross graft has been made, if the grafted shoot has not yet fused onto the root tree. So if the prohibition is on where the graft is, maintaining the graft. If a person takes the sapling out of one spot and he has a sapling and the sapling contains a forbidden graft, he places it somewhere else, he replants it somewhere else, that's maintaining the forbidden graft, because the graft still requires maintenance. It still requires the tape and such to hold it together. If, however, the fusion has been completed, there is no prohibition of replanting the sapling. See Madami Eretz, page 214, quoting the response of Rabbi Abraham Yitzchak Cook and Rabbi Chaim Yehuda Auerbach. So if once the fusion has occurred with the sapling, then it's possible to because there's no longer a prohibition of maintaining it, then it's okay to replant the tree, to replant the sapling. Topic number 17. A hybrid fruit produced by grafting a branch from one species onto a tree of another species is permitted to be eaten, even by the person who made the forbidden graft. It is also permitted to take a branch from the forbidden graft and plant it elsewhere. Or to plant the seeds of the hybrid fruit to grow new trees. Shokanoric Eurydeia, chapter 295. So regarding we're permitted to take the fruit, because once the graft has occurred, it's no longer prohibited. Therefore, the fruit would be permitted to be eaten at that point. Now, what the laws are for the Jews, I don't know. This is the laws for the Noahide. Would be that the grafted tree of fruit, the fruit from the branch that was grafted onto the tree, I should say, would be permitted. As would any of the other fruit on that particular tree. It is also, and if a person were to take a branch, so let's say there was a branch, and half of the branch is from another tree, but it's fused together. The person cuts off 3/4 of the branch, so there's branches from both the original tree and the grafted tree together. So the fuse is within this branch that's cut off, and it's got the ability to create root. So the person creates the root with the branch, and they plant it somewhere to create a new tree. That's permitted. And if the fruit creates this fruit from the branch, which has the hybrid fruit on it, creates seed, it's permitted to plant that seed and to have the trees. And I would assume, but it doesn't state clearly here, I would assume that it's a new species at that point. So it would not be permitted to cross graft with other trees. It would be a unique species. At least that would seem to make sense from what's being said here. 18. When one grafts a shoot from one species of fruit tree to the trunk of another species of fruit tree after the trunk has been uprooted, it is forbidden to replant the trunk, for that would be planting a forbidden graft. And there's no footnotes here, so it's unclear. This is a place where the divine code needs a little bit more clarity. It's unclear if this is even after the fusion has occurred or if it's while the fusion, because we had in topic 16 the case of the sapling. In the case of a sapling, that's a young shoot. It's a young tree, like normally less than a year old. That if it is if a graft is fused on the sapling, then it would be permitted to replant it. Is the difference here is two differences here. First of all, it seems to be a more grown tree, although it doesn't specify the age of the tree. But the major difference is that the grafting occurred while the root was out of the ground. That would appear to be the difference. And it may be that the fusion that occurred, even if it's fused at that point, if it fuses while the roots are out of the ground, that may not be considered a complete state, the place in the having the roots in the ground may be a necessary element in bringing it out of the state. And now that the roots are out of the state of being forbidden, and now that the roots are out of the ground, to place the roots back into the ground would be considered, if the tree, if the branches, if the graft is part of a, if the branches part is forbidden. It may be that it does not leave the forbidden state while the roots are in the out of the ground. The roots are out of the ground. It cannot leave the forbidden state, and you cannot maintain it by planting the root ball. Would be considered maintaining it even after it fuses. So it's not permitted to replant the root ball because that would be maintaining. That would appear to be what's being said here. Again, the divine code needs more. There needs some more commentary on this. Topic number 19. Even if a fruit tree is growing in a pot that is not perforated, the rules of forbidden cross grafting still applies. So again, this has to do with the tree being considered connected to the ground. So if the pot is not perforated, then it's not considered connected to the ground. If the pot is perforated on the bottom, then the tree is considered connected to the ground that's directly below the perforation. I don't exactly know why, but that's how it's figured out. So it's not. This would be connected with the. This would be similar to the halakha of the topic before, where the grafting has occurred while the root ball is out of the ground. It's not the root ball in either one of these topics are not connected. Are not considered connected to the ground. Now, I would ask a further question: is it possible, even after the graft fused for this pot, the tree that's in a pot that's not perforated, if the graft fuses, is it possible to replant the tree in the ground? That would be a further question. I'm not sure how that would apply, but by the last topic, it would seem not, but it's not clear in the divine code. Har Tivli Zerayim, Volume 2, Chapter 24 is where it talks about the pot that's not perforated. Topic number 20: the cross grafting of a grafting branch, in which the new growth tip of a shoot from one tree is inserted into the groove of a trunk from another species of fruit tree, in order to produce a branch that will bear hybrid fruit, is also forbidden. So in this case, there's times when there's hollows in trees, or there's little pockets on the side of a tree, and I would assume by a notch, it's a groove. It's referring to a natural groove because it's not. Otherwise, it'd just be a regular graft. So this is a naturally occurring groove in a tree that has sap that runs into it, and that does happen with trees get injured, and sap will run out of certain spots of it. So if a person took advantage of that naturally occurring groove and placed a branch into it, the branch will draw nutrients, will draw the sap from that groove, and it will produce roots that will grow into the tree. And this is considered a form of grafting, and it's prohibited. It should be noted that there are naturally occurring there's bushes that will take advantage. A seed falls into one of these spots, it might grow into a plant that naturally occurs in there, and the plant's roots will go into the tree. And that occurs in nature. If it occurs in nature, it's allowed, but we're not allowed to purposely take a branch from one tree and place it into that spot. That would be considered human intervention in the process. Cross-pollination of flowers of different species of fruit trees, or injecting the hormones or sap from one fruit tree into a fruit tree of a different species is permitted. It is not considered as cross-grafting one tree with another, but the seeds from the hybrid fruit will grow into a hybrid fruit tree that are considered to be a distinct species. So it is possible, it is allowed, cross-pollination is allowed. But the product of cross-pollination would be considered a new species, such as the fruit grown from a grafted branch. The seeds from that would be considered a new species. There is no explicit source that indicates that genetic modification of fruit plants is prohibited. After the fact, once modified variants of produce have been created, there is certainly no prohibition in using them in accordance with the guidelines of this chapter. So the genetically modified foods in that is permitted, but it has to be used within the, if it then gets grafted, the rules of grafting and all that would still apply in this case. Whether the genetically modified foods are considered a new species would have to be looked at more carefully on a case-by-case basis, and that would require the rabbis today must be very busy trying to figure those things out. Usually, the genetically modified foods are moderately changed so that they're not, and they're usually in crops that are annual, but it would not be in these categories. But it's something to be taken seriously, as it needs to be constantly looked at. There is a long footnote, well, not long, it's 1 page long, concerning a question of the hybrid is whether or not trees are allowed to be hybrided, and that'll go into with tomorrow's reading. Thank you.